Hi folks, in this episode we're going overdrive mode and take security of your cloud PCs to the next level with Defender for Endpoint. But before we start, please make sure to subscribe on our Windows IT Pro YouTube channel to stay up to date about all the latest news about Windows 365 Cloud PC. If you have any questions during this live episode, make sure to post them as well underneath this live stream. And with that, I'm extremely excited to share that we have Paul from the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint engineering team here. He's our friend. He's from the Netherlands as well originally, and he can tell you more about that in his introduction. So hi, Paul. How are you doing?
Hi, Christian. Yeah, thanks for having me. Fellow Dutchman here. It's been a while, but definitely nice to see you again and do this podcast. So by means of introduction, so my name is Paul. I work on the Defender for Endpoint engineering team for about 2.5 years now. Before that, I was working with Microsoft in the field, kind of working with large enterprise customers to advise them on their security journey, including to the cloud. And I'm excited today to be allowed to work on this very broad set of capabilities that we offer to our customers to secure their PCs on-prem and in cloud with this solution stack. And I would say, especially with Windows 365 and Cloud PCs, we have a better together story there. And I'm excited to tell you about that.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. And it's really excited because you have your consultancy background or like connecting with customers, solving their security challenges, and now you're doing it as part of a product. So I think it's amazing to be doing that on a large scale proactively as well, right?
Absolutely. And, to be frank, a couple of years ago, I was in front of the product group at the time, telling them all about kind of the product gaps and server and data center space. Long story short, I was invited to come solve those problems, which is very great mission as well. And, just securing our customers everywhere. That's what I get up for every day.
Yeah, that's amazing. And having a cloud solution like Defender for Endpoint together with Windows 365, really being a SaaS solution and like sort of removing the difficulty, the knowledge level you need to all spin it all and maintain and doing that all yourself is really, I think, really a better together story. And pivoting a little bit into like sort of the like setting some context for the IT Pro audience here. Defender for Endpoint is definitely not an antivirus solution or something like that. It's way more advanced, right? So can you shed some light on that, what it exactly is?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it covers a lot of ground when it comes to endpoint security capabilities. And so there is this legacy of Defender antivirus, which you may be used to from your own home machine, and you've seen it for a while. And it's a familiar concept by now. It has evolved immensely over the last, I would say, 6-7 years or so, from being that, hey, Defender antivirus is something that's just there and it does anti-malware stuff and it's kind of basic, to this billion machine covering cloud service that covers pretty much all of the Windows machines across the planet that are not running another solution. And then building on top of that cloud scale and all of these capabilities came layering on these enterprise security capabilities that involve not just doing anti-malware, but also doing all sorts of other prevention, detection, and response capabilities to sort of provide that start to finish coverage for any threat, including malware, but also advanced attacks. And some of you may be familiar with Defender ATP back in the day. I would say that Defender for Endpoint is inclusive of that ATP product, the Defender antivirus product, and then actually a whole set of capabilities now.
Yeah, that's awesome. And security definitely is top of mind of every customer these days, not only from what happens inside potentially a cloud PC, but as well what happens on the web and the analysis and everything all around. So Can you show a little bit more in depth what Microsoft Defender for Endpoint is and talking about those like pillars and the different components of that solution?
Yeah, happy to do that. So let me pull up a slide and we can talk through the different components. All right, so as you see on screen, antivirus is not even mentioned here. This would fall in the category of next generation protection. This is what I kind of refer to when I said, hey, it's much more than just antivirus. It's a large scale cloud solution. And then you see all of these other pillars around it. And so, just to highlight kind of what we're going at, these capabilities each sit in their own area, so to speak. And the areas cover the entire security lifecycle from identifying the vulnerabilities to protecting to detecting, responding, and then finally recovering from any type of attack. And the goal here is to have a very cohesive set of capabilities that do their part on each part of that lifecycle. And so, just to touch on very briefly, threat and vulnerability management is the whole of what you can do to raise the bar in when it comes to security. So this is pointing out you need to patch. This is pointing out you haven't enabled certain security capabilities. Second part, attack surface reduction, is intended to be a little bit more dynamic. So if something pops up that we don't really trust, that we have another layer of defense for a gap you may have unintentionally left open. Next generation protection is really the whole of anti-malware. It is cloud enabled and will be able to detect and block new threats very rapidly. And even if you consider that, hey, we're so good at blocking all of this stuff, aren't we done? We're not. The realization is here that anything can slip through the cracks. You have to imagine that it's always possible for something to happen that maybe doesn't involve malware or was successful in evading defenses. And that's where detection and response comes in, which is capable of monitoring and alerting and showing you the full picture of what's happening on an endpoint. And finally, there's a large part of automation involved in this product as well. So whatever does slip through the cracks and you did not respond to manually, you have this automation set up. And the last pillar that you see here, Microsoft Security Expert, that speaks to the additional services that we offer nowadays, where a team of our experts can step in and operate your Defender for Endpoint environment.
Yeah, this is awesome, and what I really like about what you just shared is the next generation piece of it, making security easier and more approachable for everyone to use, and that's exactly kind of the vision around Windows 365 as well. So combining those together, making it easy to use security and as well a solution to connect to a PC in the cloud is just a great better together story here. And we have an IT pro audience, and the IT pro audience really would like to see, hey, how are those components kind of coming together from an architectural perspective? So can you shed some light on that as well? Like, hey, how are those components and cloud services all work together on the back end?
Absolutely. And so to highlight kind of the components within the overall solution and putting the Cloud PC at the center of it, so to speak. What's good to know is that the level of integration is such that you really don't need to do all that much to get started with this protection capabilities. Most of the time, you only need to kind of connect the dots and you will already profit from this advanced protection capabilities out of the box. So just to go over kind of the components and the steps here, first and foremost, you need to obviously make sure that you have established access to these cloud services. So this would be Windows 365. You would already have access to Intune because you're a Windows 365 user, right? On top of that, you will probably want to have your Defender for Endpoint tenant ready to go. Access assigned. You want to make sure that the right people can turn the right knobs. There's probably going to be some license assignment involved as well. And then the second piece is enable this connection. And it's really nothing more, and I can show you momentarily, it's really nothing more than flipping a couple of toggles and I make sure that it all lines up. And then finally, you will need to define how you want your devices to automatically be enrolled into Defender for Endpoint to kick off that protection.
Yeah, and I really like as well the Intune integration you just highlighted. Like managing on Windows 365 Cloud PC via Intune happens via Intune, and then Defender integrates needlessly with like Intune as well. So it's really from one management experience, a consolidation effort. And with Windows 365 adding a virtualization layer with remote desktop as a protocol on top of it, it secures it even more. So I think for like large customers that have security on top of mind, this is a great solution to streamline management as part of your organization. But right now, I've been seeing so many things that are awesome. But let's get this thing going in terms of a demo. So, what did you have in mind and prepared for us for the audience?
Yeah, absolutely, Christian. So what we're about to dive into, I kind of want to take a look with you at the setup part. Just to prove that it is as easy as I just explained, there are very few steps to get up and running. I'll show you the ease of use when it comes to defining policies, where to find that, and then obviously you can play around with that. And then we'll take an actual look on a cloud PC, see what's running there, maybe see if we can trigger some bad stuff to happen or not, because the product is just very good at stopping bad stuff. So we'll see how that ends up, and then I'll show you the output in the Defender for Endpoint portal. After setting up your access, like I just mentioned, and you've defined your roles. These can be security administrator, for example. It's time to actually set up that connection between the two products. So I won't bore you with a lot of details because there are none, but essentially within the Intune portal or the Endpoint Manager Admin Center, you'll find the Endpoint Security node. Within the Endpoint Security node sits Defender for Endpoint Setup. And this is where you have various options for various device types and policies. The one that I would like to kind of focus on is this one, is essentially saying connect Windows devices to Defender for Endpoint, and that needs to be on. Now that is on the Intune side really the only step you need to take right now. The other piece is after you've gone to the Defender for Endpoint site, you need to complete the connection, so to speak. So you need on both sides, you need to flip this toggle. Let me go ahead and quickly jump to that anyway, so you can see that in action. I go to security.microsoft.com, which is the portal for all things security. I go to my settings, and then I'll select the endpoints settings page. And within the endpoint settings page, I will see advanced features. I scroll down here, and you will find the toggle enable Intune connection. You flip that, and we're done here. So let me go back to the other page, because that is where we'll perform some configuration. Next step would be create an endpoint detection and response profile. Create a policy here targeted to the right platform, which will be Windows 10, Windows 11, obviously running your cloud PC, and then select the profile endpoint detection and response. And this is where you'll be provided with an option to connect machines to Defender for Endpoint. So this piece specifically where it says endpoint configuration package type is where you will be able to select auto from connector. And this is then the secret that is pulled over through that connection we just formed that will instruct that cloud PC to onboard to Defender for Endpoint. There's some other options that are more manual in nature, but this is by far the easiest way. You will go next, finish, and you're done. The last piece would be to assign the profile to your PCs based on the Azure Active Directory, or to your users, again, based on Azure Active Directory.
Thanks, Paul. And this really helps clarifying or explaining how you can configure and push down the components of Defender for Endpoint to cloud PCs. But what about like optimizing the security with best practices and baselines in Intune? Can you explain a little bit on like how you configure that?
Yeah, absolutely, Christian. So whilst it is possible, so the initial step is endpoint detection response. This is kind of your first step to get the device to report up to Defender for Endpoint. And the next step would be, how about sending down some configuration policies to raise the bar on the default security configuration? And there's a couple of ways to do that. you can define profiles for each different component, or you can jump to the security baselines, which will allow you to essentially select a good set of secure defaults to start enforcing on your machines. Now, it might very well be that you're not actually changing any settings because the default configuration might already suit your needs. However, these baselines are an important step to actually enforce that configuration, which makes it immutable from a policy perspective, which is good for security. So yes, diving into these baselines, we can take a look here. There is even a Windows 365 security baseline available nowadays that you can quickly select, and it will preload a bunch of the settings that we feel should be present on any device. And here you will also see Microsoft Defender policies already being predefined, right? So, and this is where you can take a cue off of this. It's a perfectly fine starting point for you to work with. You might want to configure some exclusions for certain line of business applications that you know are problematic, but for a large part, this is going to suit most needs. Okay, so now that everything's configured, up and running, let's look at a fully configured Cloud PC and see how it behaves when we try to shove something bad at it, right? Now, first and foremost, I have to apologize. It's actually very hard to simulate something without Defender getting in the way, which speaks to the strength of the product in its capabilities to prevent bad stuff from happening, right? I have this PC open here. This is a Cloud PC. And first, I would like to show you that this service is active. This is kind of it's one of the ways you can see that Defender for Endpoint was fully onboarded is by looking at this executable, this service here. You see Advanced Threat Protection Service executable. This tells me this machine has been successfully onboarded, and I can assume that the configuration has been applied. If you really want to dive into it, you can use PowerShell to double check that configuration, or even registry if you want to. For now, let's assume that the configuration is in place. I have here a cloud delivered protection demonstration web page. And this is what I'm going to use to sort of visualize what Defender for Endpoint is doing in the background that most of the time you won't even notice as an end user. So I'm just going to download a test file. And right off the bat, when I do that, Smart Screen, which you may have seen at home as well, is the first layer of defense. I actually need to go ahead and right click this and say keep in order to progress and to get another warning. So here I need to jump through another hoop and say keep anyway. Now, what happens now is that Defender is actually blocking this. So it never even reached the download stage until I said keep it anyway. And now you saw Defender do its thing. And I'm not even able to download this file. It's simply not downloaded. So it's removed already. It's been remediated. I can show you downloads folder is empty. And then as you will have seen many times, well, hopefully not many times, but if you go to Windows Security Center on your machine, and you can do this on your home machine. By the way, the simulation that I ran is perfectly safe. You don't need to be worried about that. So you'll see when I open Windows Security Center, it's actually all green. And the reason for that is if I go to protection history, it was already blocked. So it said, hey, threat blocked. It was severe, but guess what? We're actually able to just block it, and it was removed. So end result, nothing happened. You were protected. Now, by itself, this a threat, a piece of malware that a user might, want to ignore all the warnings for, isn't necessarily the worst thing that can happen to a machine. In reality, the bigger concern here is when this piece of malware was accompanied by an actual hacker, an attacker that is trying to do other things on that machine. So malware is a tool for bad people to gain access to your machine and your environment, right? And so what we really want to dive into here is what can we see as a security team that would indicate that this is going on and what was done to prevent the attack from succeeding. So the malware piece is just a small fragment of an overall attack, and that is what Defender for Endpoint is best in, is in visualizing the end-to-end. Let me switch back to the Microsoft 365 Defender portal, which is even more comprehensive when it comes to security because it also involves email security, identity-based security, and collaboration app security. And so it's more expansive to that, but within this portal, this unified experiences, device inventory will show you kind of the overview of all of your machines and what's going on those machines. Okay, so I pulled up a machine that has a lot of things going on. As you can see, big red, risk level high, exposure level high. Obviously, there's a bunch of stuff going on here. Now, what I want to zoom in on is especially the alerts that would be active here. This demo machine has, a lot of simulations that were applied to it, and we kind of gathered everything up into what we call an incident. And so this incident shows all of the alerts and products that were involved, detections that were involved in this attack story. So I said malware is just part of what goes on in an advanced attack. This would show that malware remediation somewhere in between alongside all the other alerts. Now, focusing back on the front page here, you'll see risk level high. And this is an interesting segue to how this operates within the Intune and Cloud PC ecosystem. Because when this risk level goes up, it gets sent over to Intune. And when it gets sent over to Intune, we can then build a compliance policy that will mark the device as incompliant if a certain risk level was reached. So this means if there are active threats on the device, it gets sent over to Intune. In Intune, you can build a policy that says devices with risk level high are no longer compliant, and then you can use that status for building conditional access policies. For those not familiar with conditional access, this will essentially allow you to deny access based on this risk level. By the time that I remediate the incidents and alerts, which can be automated away, this risk level will eventually be cleared. This will restore access using conditional access and allow the user to access their Office 365 again, for example.
Well, thanks, Paul. And these demos were amazing. It really showed insights, and I really learned something today. And I definitely know the audience, the IT Pro audience here, knows more than before starting this episode. And if you want to become even more an expert, we have a surprise for you as well. But before I'm sharing that with Paul, Paul, how can people in touch with you via social media and such to learn more about Defender for Endpoint?
Oh, yeah. I mean, please do follow me on Twitter. I'm pretty active. I like to tweet stuff that's brand new. And so follow me for news and announcements there. Similar on LinkedIn, it will be a little bit more meaty. Like there will be more content around it that I publish there. So go ahead and connect with me there. And yeah, that's pretty much it for social.
And if you want to dive a little bit deeper in everything you just learned today, the surprise we brought up is that I just learned that you have been writing a book with some other folks as well. So can you share a little bit more on that and how people can pre-order it potentially?
Yes, absolutely. And just to be fair, I mean, there's nothing that's going to beat being hands-on and just trying all of this stuff out. But that said, I mentioned before is that it's quite a big product by now, and so there's a lot to know and a lot to learn. And so I would say that was the opportunity that I seized upon together with my co-authors, Joe Anich and Justin Graves, who come from different walks of life. So where we started out saying, hey, Paul was in the field working with enterprise as a consultant, my peers on the book, my co-authors, one of them is actually in the Microsoft SOC doing the day-to-day operations on the Defender for Endpoint, and the other is in DART, our incident responders. They literally fly in using helicopters to help customers recover from these advanced attacks. and he also uses the same tool in the field. So with these diverse perspectives, we felt, hey, this is a great start and a great collaboration for a book. You can find the pre-order link at aka.ms/MDE book. And it's not out yet. It will be out on March 3rd.
Well, thanks, Paul. And I didn't know about that helicopter kind of experience there, so that's really cool. So I will take you on that maybe in the future. Hey, thank you for being a guest here. It's really like amazing what you showed, and it was really like the level of education this audience needs, and brings the security level of Windows 365 even higher in overdrive, as you said in the beginning as well. And yeah, with it, I just wanted to thank the audience again to watch. And if you're new, like participant, please go to ak.ms/Windows in the Cloud to check all the previous episodes as well. And I hope to see you back next time, and enjoy the rest of your day. So thank you for watching.